Let's get started with the Supreme Court striking down Biden's student loan forgiveness, which is awful.
Supreme Court, the court just ruled that the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness plan is unconstitutional. The White House estimates the plan would have affected 37 million Americans.
For the record, there was no standing and no genuine harm established in this situation. And in another situation involving the gay graphic design story. And yet both of these rulings were completely partisan, were completely ridiculous, and also, I would even say, unconstitutional. But it doesn't matter because that's the Supreme Court, baby. They get to decide on whatever the they want to, and you can't do a thing about it. 120 million people will be impacted by this decision because they decided to do so. Well, guess what? Doesn't matter. Sucks to suck.
The plan has been on hold since 6 Republican-led states who claimed the program violated President Biden's executive power took the administration to court. But the Biden administration argued the plan is permitted within the law and cited the HEROES Act, which allows the Secretary of Education to make changes related to student loans during national emergencies like the COVID pandemic.
Good morning, Nate, and welcome to the Supreme Court Plaza. As you said, in a 6-3 decision from the Supreme Court, writing on behalf of that majority, Chief Justice John Roberts addresses that question you raised right at the top, Nate. Did the HEROES Act, passed by Congress in 2003, give the Biden administration's education department the right to modify or amend that act to provide this student loan forgiveness? The court, through a 6-3 majority, says absolutely not. Let me read the main paragraph from the decision.
Let me just explain something to you guys, okay? One thing that's like exceptional about this, it was expected, it was awful, but you know, such is the nature of the United States Supreme Court, okay? But what is particularly frustrating to me, at least, as someone who is a politics watcher, politics enjoyer, Brett Kavanaugh, he has a lot of experience with debt relief, okay? As a matter of fact, when he was running or when he was slated to be appointed to the United States Supreme Court, obviously you do a background check, and in that background check, certain things popped up. Brett Kavanaugh had a tremendous, mountainous amount of debt that may or may not be related to his gambling addiction, his sports book. And that debt was wiped out suspiciously. Very odd. And we also completely stopped talking about that. It kind of got lost in the sauce with the other stuff, the Me Too stuff that he was involved in. And for some reason, nobody really mentioned that. I think it's a good time to bring that back in the especially coming on the heels of this ridiculous, absolutely unimaginably cruel decision that the Supreme Court made that basically favored a couple corporations who claimed that they could be potentially harmed financially by this decision and put their financial interest over the interest of 120 million Americans. That disappeared or the debt was transferred to somewhere under the table. We don't know. We don't know what happened. But just think about that. Justice Roberts also said everyone talking shit is being toxic. Chief Justice Roberts calls out Democrats demonizing Supreme Court opinions they don't like. It has become a disturbing feature of some recent opinions to criticize decisions with which they disagree. That's interesting. So, that's the situation. 43 million Americans who were promised relief by an elected president just got screwed over by an unelected group of justices, half of whom were appointed by a president who lost a popular vote and benefited from a stolen seat. Yep, it's totally fine. Nothing to see here, says Mehdi Hassan. Very wild. Very, very wild decision. Justice Alito accepted tens of thousands of dollars in lavish vacation gifts from a billionaire who lobbied to cancel student loan forgiveness. After the gifts, Alito voted to overturn. This SCOTUS's corruption undercuts its legitimacy by putting its rulings up for sale. New York Times useful life hack on how to escape student debt. All right. We'll get to all the fun memes that are coming out of this like horrifying story that is basically yet another demonstration of the banality of evil. The evil that you experience in your everyday as an American citizen in a system that is completely corrupt and does not have your best interest at heart. What even makes this unconstitutional? I don't think anything makes this unconstitutional. It's very much within the boundaries and power of the United States president. Okay, this is anyone that tells you that this is like unacceptable or like we gotta fucking defer to the Supreme Court on this is fucking ridiculous. They are lying to you. Okay. They have been duped. At least some of the other people are like, well, this is unfair that it's happening to begin with. Like, those guys are fucking assholes, but at least they're not like, I don't know, completely in the wrong. They're still wrong. They have the wrong opinion, but they're not like wrong about the law, at least. You know what I mean? As long as they don't say that it is illegal for the president to do this, because it is perfectly legal for the president to do this.
The HEROES Act provides no authorization for the Secretary's plan when examined using the ordinary tools of statutory interpretation, let alone clear congressional authorization for such a program, meaning the court said Congress never intended for any administration to use the HEROES Act to waive all of this, or grant, rather, this loan forgiveness.
Dude, what's up with the PPP loan forgiveness? Why the fuck is nobody talking about the PPP loan forgiveness? Oh, no, that's constitutionally apt. That's totally something within the power of Congress. Like, well, you know, why did that happen? Oh, that's right. It's because that was for small businesses and mega corporations for the most part. So that was okay. That was like the upper middle class to like wealthy Americans that benefited from that. So fuck you to the student workers. You do not get even a little bit of financial restitution, which you shouldn't even need to begin with, because there should be no debt incurred to get educated. It is so stupid. The idea that you need to be saddled with debt to become a more productive laborer when alternatives exist where other countries that are also developed nations, not only in most instances pay for the college education, but sometimes pay you to go to college. It blows my fucking mind. Stop saying worthless degrees. You're a fucking idiot, okay? You are a dumbass. I'm just going to tell you right now, there's no such thing as a worthless degree. It does not fucking matter that you consider something to be worthless. You would not have a stupid take like this, perhaps if you had a degree or if you learned how to read. There's no such thing as a fucking worthless degree. I don't give a fuck what kind of like gender queer theory you're learning in college. It does not matter, okay? Every single instance of education, which is usually comprehensive to begin with, because even if you're getting a fucking a degree in gender science or whatever, you're still learning a lot more basics. You're still learning critical thinking. It's advancing society regardless, okay? Ultimately, college is a good thing. It's a good experience to have. You learn more critical thinking skills. You learn a lot in college. Even if you're not paying that much attention, you still learn a bunch of things in college. You get to be in a diverse environment, a walkable city, enjoy some level of adequate public transit. You know, these are all things that you get to experience in college, okay? It's a good thing. Self-serving much? Self-serving much in what respect? If you think it's self-serving for me to say that every single American deserves to get a college education for free because that would objectively make this country a better place, and you think that that's somehow self-serving to me, then newsflash, you're right. It is self-serving to me. It's self-serving to you as well. You're just too stupid to recognize it's self-serving to you as well. We would all be better off if everyone was able to get a free education. Okay, that's it. The idea that this is like self-serving much, like you think that's an own, dude? Yeah. I want everyone to be educated so there are less dumb fucks like you, okay? How about that? You're right, including you, by the way. The fact that college is as expensive as it is fucking ridiculous. Oh, here's the other one, by the way. There was no standing. There was no fucking standing for the actual Arkansas and, Wisconsin companies that brought this up the courts all the way to the Supreme Court. Like, they weren't even fucking financially impacted by this. There are two situations where in two major decisions today, the Supreme Court ruled on issues where there was no standing to begin with. Absolutely unimaginably cruel for no particular reason other than the financial interests of those that engage in debt refinancing, like SoFi, people that actually spend a lot of money to make sure that the Supreme Court justices are put in positions of power, positions of prominence, to dish out decisions like the ones that they just did and lobby the government, both the Democrats and the Republicans. The company had another email that said they actually would be more damaged if the forgiveness was struck down because a lot of people won't pay and that cost them money to try to track them down, and it's a loss. It was literally Republican politicians acting at the behest of corporations that did not necessarily ask for it in this circumstance. It still certainly helps corporations, especially big ones like SoFi, but like they literally moved on their own pretty much. I may be stupid, but why should a student be forgiven for student loans? Like, you knew what you were getting into, so why you should get off paying it back? Now I get the interest a bit problem, but at least pay back what you borrowed. I think ultimately what I believe in this situation is that college should be free. And the idea that like you have to take a loan out to go to college is already a ridiculous one. So any kind of effort that eases even a margin of that burden on the population that went to college is a good one. I am someone who not only paid his own student loans because I was very fortunate, but paid off my brother's student loans as well. And Obviously, not many are as fortunate. So I look at that situation and I go, it's great that the government is actually taking action on this. It should not even exist to begin with. This student loan debt relief should not have to exist because student loan debt relief should not even be a thing. Student loans should not be a thing because college education should be either tremendously affordable or just completely free like it is in many other countries. It's that simple. It's not more complicated than that, because this is not a loan that people are taking on to buy a car, which, by the way, in many instances would be subsidized by the government in the form of not even needing a fucking car because you would have adequate public transit as a completely viable alternative. But in America, everything is so decentralized and left up to the individual because this hyper-libertarian, hyper-individualist, American exceptionalist mentality has rotted everyone to the fucking core that they think like, oh no, like everything's up to me. I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to do everything on my own. Meanwhile, the real reason why such mentality exists in America is so that massive corporations can continue benefiting from shafting you, because they are the ones who provide the alternative, and they're the ones who usually can get away with getting you to pay for it because you have no other alternative. In the upcoming days, you're going to hear a lot about this decision and why it was a good thing and how it's unfair to do this loan debt relief to begin with, and it's bullshit. The argument that has stood the test of time still applies here. If you had to get chemotherapy, and that's the only way you could get through cancer, if there was a better alternative to chemotherapy and it was invented, you would never turn around and go, no, everyone should go through chemotherapy. Because I went through chemotherapy, and that was really fucking unfair for other people to go through, skirt along without any sort of chemo and the pain that comes along with it to get rid of the cancer in their bodies. If someone were to make that argument, you would consider that to be absolutely fucking insane. Ask chatters if they want to live in a country full of morons or not. That's why we need a free education. I think a lot of chatters would rather live in a country that resembles their own fucking idiocy. So those are the ones who are chirping right now. If you went to public institutions, should you pay back your kindergarten all the way to 12th grade? Because private alternatives to that exist. Tomorrow, it could be privatized. The government currently at least offers some level of income and some level of funds to the public institutions so you can get a K through 12 education. Should you start paying back that too? Is that what libertarians are going to do? You do, through taxes. Yeah, you'd be maybe your perspective would shift a little bit if you realize that you also pay for public institutions of higher learning as well in your taxes and get pretty much nothing in return, for the record. You and I both agree. We already pay for it, and we pay a fuckload more in taxes that goes God knows where, most of the time to the military-industrial complex. Maybe you should go to the colleges. You just described a pivotal part of Bernie Sanders' 2016 and 2020 platform for free college. The irony also is that you already have been paying your taxes, and the federal government absolutely has the opportunity to abolish this debt. If we're going to talk about the constitutional viability or whether or not the president has this power to begin with, the answer is yes. The president does have this power. That's the other side of the story. The president absolutely has the power to abolish student loan debt. It's literally debt that the government technically paid for already. Department of Education, which is controlled by the president, has the capacity to forgive all matter of debt. It's already been paid for. Don't say no as the Secretary of Education. Who appointed the Secretary of Education? What are you talking about? It's still the president that has final say on the matter if he wants to, if he has enough energy. It is perfectly constitutional, and anyone who says that it's not constitutional is out of their minds. They're wrong. They're absolutely wrong. Internal emails from Mohala show that even Mohala says a lawsuit in front of SCOTUS to kill student debt cancellation should be dismissed for lack of standing, and that Mohala isn't harmed by this cancellation. Here are the internal emails. I saw that already yesterday. Mohala isn't technically a part of the lawsuit. The Missouri Attorney General is suing on their behalf. However, it's all about the FFEL stuff. And since they changed the rules, that lawsuit should be ruled as lacking standing. For those of you who don't know what this means, it means that there's no genuine harm in the situation. Because normally, for you to be able to sue someone, you have to prove that this person is harming you in some way, okay? In a financial way, emotional way, whatever. Right? Technically, the institutions that are being brought up in this regard are being used as a political pawn by Republican-appointed freaks. No, I think Mohala was opposed to this move, but couldn't do anything about it. The Missouri State Attorney General needed to claim that our borrowers were harmed for standing, so they're making us look bad by filing this, not only with Missouri on it, but especially bad because they filed it in MO. The reality here is that, like, there was no real fucking harm being done to anybody, and they still went along with it for political purposes, for political reason, to take out a campaign promise that Biden had made, that he had every right to do so. I know they put Nancy Pelosi in here, chat. I know. It doesn't matter. It's not proof of anything. As then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi explained, this is on the opinion. People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress in a press conference, said the Office of the Speaker of the House. Yes, that is the nerdiest way to just like own the Biden administration. If Nancy Pelosi said this, well, I guess we can't fucking do it then. I guess it has to be true. It's not true. There are numerous different ways that Biden could eradicate this student loan debt. Okay, that has been incurred by the Department of Education. And we shit on Nancy Pelosi back then. Let's talk about what David has written, because he's written extensively on the subject. So after today's words, because Biden came out and spoke about what this new program and new cancellation methods were going to look like. Here's what he had to say. So according to the president's words, they're going to create a new program, I presume, with the same parameters under the Compromise and Settlement Authority of the Higher Education Act that we discussed as the main way to cancel student loan debt years ago, because there are still ways to cancel this student loan debt. He mentioned that it will take longer. I think this is what that means. There are a couple of regulatory hurdles. They are discussed in this letter. There's something called the Federal Claims Collection Standards that requires a rulemaking if an agency wants to cancel debt owed to the government. There are federal standards that govern this authority. Congress granted Education Secretary its own authority under the HEA, and these Harvard lawyers think it controls. But others have been wary of that interpretation. A 2016 amendment to these rules does reference the FCCS. In addition, late in George W. Bush's term, a regulation modified the Secretary of Education's authority to compromise or settle a debt, giving the Department of Justice a review and comment period on any proposed resolution of a claim that's over $1 million. At the very least, that review process would have to happen. At the most, the secretary would have to go through the FCCS process. Either way, that would take time. That's why clearing this regulatory underbrush should have been done in January 20 or 2021, not 3 years in. Now, of course, the SCOTUS could then try and turn around and knock this down because they also said that Title 4 of the Higher Education Act of 1965 governs federal financial aid mechanisms, including student loans. The act authorizes the Secretary of Education to cancel or reduce loans in certain limited circumstances. The Secretary may cancel a set amount of loans held by some public servants. He may also forgive the loans of borrowers who have died or become permanently and totally disabled, borrowers who are bankrupt, and borrowers whose schools falsely certify them, close down, or fail to pay their lenders. The issue presented in this case is whether the Secretary has authority under the Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students, the HEROES Act of 2003, to depart from the existing provisions of the Education Act and establish a student loan forgiveness program that will cancel about $430 billion in debt, principal, and affect nearly all borrowers. Under the HEROES Act, the Secretary may waive or modify any statutory regulatory provision applicable to the Student Financial Assistance Program under Title IV, as the Secretary deems necessary in connection with a war or other military operation or national emergency. For those of you who are saying, why didn't Biden do this earlier? It's because it wasn't so close to the midterms, okay? That's why. They like to trickle some of the more popular and easily doable, or some of the easily doable campaign promises later in the race, so that the midterms pass already. I'm talking about why they didn't do it immediately when they had the majority as well. So they had like some kind of additional support from Congress that you could maybe tack on to a budget reconciliation or something. Which, by the way, who knows if they could have done that, because there are plenty of spoilers within the party, and that was their goal. Their goal was to literally destroy Biden's agenda, which Biden himself is not all too keen on advancing. Can anyone get rid of these corrupt justices? No. As you have seen, ProPublica has done endless amounts of coverage on how corrupt the institution is and how corrupt these individual justices are. Over and over again. Every other week, there's like a new article that comes out where it's like a billionaire literally sucked the penis of Chief Justice. And then, they brought a case that directly related to the billionaire to the Supreme Court, and it's totally fine. And then they come out and they're like, well, I didn't know I couldn't get my dick sucked off by a billionaire. Sorry. I thought this was America. And then it's fine. There's not really much you can do. I guess you can expand the Supreme Court, but obviously, Joseph Robinette Biden is not interested in that, and I have to go back and refresh my knowledge on how to legally be able to do that. It's just, I don't know what else to say. because I don't think Biden is interested in making these changes. I mean, there might be some way to overcome these institutional hurdles. There's always a way to overcome institutional hurdles. You can just like do whatever you fucking want to do, but there's not really much you can do without serious organizing, without an actual worker-backed backbone. Very difficult to make any kind of momentum stick. When are you going to cover the LGBTQ plus Supreme Court ruling? Dude, I'm not going to cover it, okay? I'm not, because I hate gay people, so I'm not going to cover it. Let's move on to the other Supreme Court situation, the web designer one. So this one is actually really interesting because this, much like the previous Supreme Court decision, was a non-issue that the Supreme Court decided to take on. You're not supposed to take on hypothetical circumstances where there is no harm whatsoever. Why the fuck would you do that? There's no harm whatsoever. Why are you making up hypothetical situations to get mad at like a goddamn fucking hater of mine? You know what I mean? You just decided, you're like, you know what? What if this happened, Hasan? What then, you fucking idiot? Huh? How would you feel then, you asshole? Bet you'd fucking hate it if that shit happened, huh? The guy named in the case didn't even know about it. The website doesn't exist. Let's continue.
This is the ruling on free speech case involving a familiar challenge here. The question whether businesses can refuse service to LGBTQ customers because doing so would violate the business owner's First Amendment rights.
Once again, this didn't happen, but the Supreme Court basically was like, what if it did? Like, it didn't happen, but what if it did though? Let's consider a world in which it did and then deliberate on it.
It was a 6-3 decision. The Supreme Court rules for a Christian web designer who objected to making wedding websites for same-sex couples. And we're going to go back to Devin Dwyer on this one.
The First Amendment prohibits the government from forcing any of us from saying anything we don't want to say. At the same time, civil rights laws in this country say that businesses that are open to the public have to serve everybody. But what the court said today is that businesses, in some cases, can refuse to serve certain customers if doing so would force them to say something they don't want to say, like a business who designs websites, a stationer, maybe even someone who is landscaping your yard. If that is an expressive, customized, and tailored service, Neil Gorsuch said that the government cannot force you to do that business with someone that you don't want to do business with or something you don't want to say.
HasanAbi, I'm a seminarian, so I need to be a priest, and the fact that this right-wing Christianity has become a cult of money and power should be opposed at every turn by every person of good conscience. I agree. But, you know, unfortunately, it will not. Let's be real. They have all the power. And I don't mean just like right-wingers. Most of this stuff is just used as a cudgel, as a way to divide the population. They're just basically throwing red meat at the psychopathic right-wingers to continue making it seem like they're doing something that's of use as they rob them blind. You know what I mean? I think it's like one of those things where you're just basically supposed to, it's like an unwritten rule, right? Like, if you don't want to fucking work for someone, you don't have to work for someone. Right? I'll give you an example. There's a difference between a preference versus discrimination in like dating. Like, you can have a preference, but shouldn't be a discriminating asshole. Right? And it's kind of like that. Like, there is a million different ways that you could just be like, oh, I'm sorry, I have too much of a workload or whatever. If you don't want to fucking work for someone, right? If you don't want to like make a website for someone. But this situation, and that's usually how it's handled, by the way, in the real world. Don't say no, bad example. That is how it should work. And that is how it has worked. This, on the other hand, gives you basically a legal allowance to just be like, yeah, you're fucking gay and I don't want to work for you. Which also opens up the door to additional forms of discrimination on the basis of religious freedom. Get the fuck out of here. That's not a bad example at all. There are plenty of fucking people who choose not to work for people, okay? The most extreme will now call for denying interracial couples, certainly. My point is, there are plenty of moments in your life where you might not want to fucking work for somebody, okay, as a contractor, and you can openly tell them, oh, I don't want to work for somebody. I don't want to work for you, or you can give them an example, okay? Like, at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. I offer you plenty of opportunities not to see the ad break at the top of the hour because I know, you can just say, no, I want to watch the ad. That's fine. But if you don't want to, you can subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime.